Hello and welcome to the inaugural episode of Farber Photogenics Photography Fables. I had to count it out there. I'm new at this, new at the name, and I figured it just might be long enough and ugly enough to catch a few ears, you know? Anyway, I guess that's my thinking. So, in this podcast, I'd like to talk about my photography adventures, not just the photography aspect of it, but the other aspects of it. Part of the reason why I love nature photography is that I love nature, that it is my happy place. It is my peaceful place. It is where I recenter myself. And I take a lot of joy from that. And we need joy in our lives. I've realized this, especially as I've aged. So I'd like to start off this podcast by talking about my favorite spot in nature, which is Mount Shasta. So I started camping there around 8 years old with my family, and we continue to go every summer, usually in August, to spend a week by the lake and enjoy the mountain views and all of the other good nature around there. When I was 16, my family split apart and stopped going as regularly. But as I aged into a teenager and into an adult, I kept on going pretty much every year, sometimes multiple times a year. It was just a place that I always loved to be. It didn't matter who I was with, when it was, what the circumstances were. I just wanted to be there. So it was remarkable to me with as much time as I spent around this area from 8 years old to now that I'm 40 plus. I had never hiked on the mountain until I was 29 years old. And that actually was a very special time for me and very influential in my experience in nature since then. I have always tried to experience old places in new ways, and I continue to try and do that. This is not the first time I took some photos of the stars at Mount Shasta, but this is the first time that I took them at this particular spot. Now, this is along Everett Memorial Highway, which is the main highway that you can drive up the mountain. I mean, you can drive up to, I think, almost 8,000 feet, and the mountain's about 14,000. So you're driving up quite a bit there. This is more around 7,000 feet. This is right near the Bunny Flat trailhead. And I actually was here this last August, is when I took this photo. And as you can see, we got some really nice lupine, purple wildflowers in the foreground there. And I thought I was going to be too late for good wildflowers, but I was wrong. This was probably the most colorful and beautiful I'd ever seen wildflowers on the mountain, which was a real treat. Especially the lupine, these were so fragrant. You can't get within 50 to 100 feet of them without just being overwhelmed by the beautiful smells. So, with these flowers being in full bloom like that, I really wanted to add them to the foreground of the photo of the stars, especially with a little, it was just a thin spot of the Milky Way. That is the one thing that if you're photographing the Milky Way, or you want to photograph the Milky Way with Mount Shasta, now typically in the summer months, which are the best months to photograph the Milky Way, it's going to be best photographed in the southern to southwestern skies. Now, the main part of Mount Shasta, and really the iconic view of the mountain, because it is fairly unique in the Cascade Range of what it looks like, especially when you're on the west side. And this is the west side. So I was photographing towards the east, which is basically the opposite direction of the bulk and the meaty part of the Milky Way during this time. So you're not going to get those amazing, really vivid big chunks of the Milky Way, which you can see in a lot of astrophotography. But you can still get a little bit of what you want to see there, and it adds a little something to the photograph, obviously. And with that being, very colorful within itself, it can play off of the beautiful, colorful wildflowers. Now, this is actually the first time, well, it's not the first time that I've done some successful light painting with photography. Now, if you don't know what light painting is, it's when you take a flashlight or some kind of external light and shine it on a certain part of the frame of the photograph so that it will bring the light up for that section, right? But not the whole photograph. So that's what I did down here. And it took me quite a while to get it right. And that's the thing, is when you photograph at night, especially when you're like me, who, I don't do it every week. So there is some sort of relearning of the process every time you go, because every night and every photo shoot is unique anyway. So you're going to have to make consolations for whatever the situation calls for. So the biggest thing was to get the frame and the composition of the photograph set up how I wanted it, right? If you're not really sure what that means, it's just, what is going to be in the photo and what is not. And when it's dark outside and you can't necessarily see what you're photographing in the frame, and plus you want to get it level, you don't want to have it cockeyed like this, it takes a while. It takes a bunch of little micro adjustments, and you take a photo and then you adjust, and then you take a photo and then you adjust, and then you take another photo and then you adjust again. So it probably took me a good 20 to 30 minutes just to do that part. Then, with the light painting, probably at least half a dozen different frames to kind of get the light the way I wanted it to. And then after that, I was able to start really focusing on taking pictures of the stars and adding myself to the frame, obviously. Now, adding myself to the frame is something that I like to do from here and there. And this is one of the prime examples. It's a great time to get a silhouette of yourself at the stars. And luckily, I was fortunate enough to see these two shooting stars coming right past me as I took this photo. And in fact, this was my first attempt at getting my silhouette in the frame, and it worked out beautifully. Usually it takes quite a bit more than just one attempt, but this worked out very nicely, and I'm very happy with that. The fun thing about Mount Shasta as well, which I've learned as an adult, I didn't know as a kid, is that it has quite this mystical aura about it. In fact, it has attracted spiritual seekers from all over the world for a long time. And I've actually had different experiences on the mountain where I met different groups that had come from South America and from East Asia. And I was able to photograph, a group photo for one of them, I remember back in the day. And they were very appreciative, and we had a few conversations, and my friend and I were lucky enough to be blessed by their matriarch on our way down the mountain, which still to this day is a special experience to me. I am no longer a religious person, but I and I don't want to call myself spiritual, I know a lot, there's a lot of different ideas out there. What I am is I'm an open mind and an open heart, and I want to digest and feel and learn it all from all perspectives, because I think we all have really unique individual perspectives of who we are and where we came from and how we see the world. And I'm a listener. I'm an observer. I want to digest all of those things and take them in and really help grow my wisdom and view of myself and humanity and nature and the cosmos. So one of the fun things about this night, actually, there was a group of people who I'd actually seen earlier in the day at a lake. They were obviously doing some sort of spiritual retreat. They knew each other. There was music involved when I saw them, and so I saw them hiking up the mountain right by me. And they got up kind of towards the tree line, up towards the mountain. And I don't always like this sort of thing, but it was kind of cool. And they had a big speaker and they blasted this really kind of trippy music, and they had some lights going on, which sometimes that can be a little invasive to the other people around. But I didn't take it as such. And, I try in my best when I'm outside to understand that we're on public lands, and that I am not the only one out there trying to enjoy peace and nature and get something out of it, regardless of what it is. So sharing is something that I think we can all do a better job of. And so I was happy to share the mountain that night with that group. And like I said, I kind of enjoyed some of their trippy music. And I wasn't thrilled about the lights they were putting up, because obviously that would get in the way of my photography. But there weren't constant lights, they weren't, whatnot. So I was able to work around them. And sometimes that's the thing when you share spots with people and you're a photographer and they aren't thinking like you are, and you aren't thinking like they are. And honestly, there should be room for everybody. I remember being at Arches one time, and there was a group of photographers there who looked like they were on a workshop together, which this happens a lot. Photographers get together and they have a leader or two, and they take people to these places and they set them up and they show them what to do. And so it was one of those things. And so I was kind of sitting, in a similar place with the photographers waiting for sunset on Delicate Arch. And of course, there were also just kind of regular tourist hikers, people, not photographers, hanging around and taking pictures of the arch and walking underneath it and whatnot. And I was just kind of a little upset with the different attitudes I heard from the photographers I was sitting next to, and about how, oh, these people are in our way, all blah, 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 blah. It's like, hey, you don't own this national park. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's public land and you didn't rent it out. So I can get being a little annoyed and frustrated at times with different circumstances around these things, but I think that we have to remember that we don't own anything. We're all here to enjoy this place, and we're all here enjoying it in different ways. And everyone should be allowed to take a selfie with the arch or whatever they want, you know. But, I heard one guy, oh God, what are you doing? Are you going to pay for my ticket? I came here to take a photo and you're in the way. Well, if this guy's really, a photographer and whatnot, there are ways to remove said people from the photograph and still have the same effect. So anyway, it's always good to keep in mind that you're not the only person out there. and other people are allowed to recreate too. So anyway, it was fun when this group came down off the mountain because they came down before I was finished, which also gives me better chance to take photos without them in the way, right? Without their lights. So, but I was able to talk to them for a few minutes. It was just fun, a fun interaction with a good group of people. And there's space for everybody. So luckily, I was able to get some good shots of what I wanted. I was able to make the foreground wildflowers work out and get a clear shot of the mountain and my silhouette. And I am very happy with this photo. I will keep it with me always. And I can't wait till the next time I go back to my mountain. Until then, this has been Farber Photography. Oh, no, Farber Photogenics Photography Fables. And we'll come back with some more stories of nature and technical photography aspects. So stay tuned.